I'm showing 1:30. We'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. I'd like to entertain a motion we accept the minutes of the previously held meeting.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. We have 3 items that are up for public hearing this afternoon. And to let everyone here, our new guests, know the process is that we will conduct these public hearings this afternoon at 1:30, and we'll have them again at 7 o'clock this evening. We'll ask those in favor to speak, those opposed to speak as well. We'll ask that you provide for us your name and address before you speak, and we'll also ask that a representative from our law department swear all those people in that wish to testify before the committee today. To also let you know, this afternoon the committee will not make a recommendation in reference to the proposed conditional use request. We will not make a recommendation this afternoon, but we will this evening at 7 o'clock, either to pass it, to turn it down, or to just table the issue for another week or two. So that's the process, and with that, I'll ask the representative from our law department to swear in those individuals who wish to speak this afternoon.
Hey, if you plan to speak this committee hearing, please stand, raise your right hand, and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the first item it's up for a public hearing is authorizing a conditional use to establish a medical marijuana dispensary at 1912 Buckles Boulevard. Mr. Antonucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Galenas Wellness LLC proposes to utilize and renovate the southernmost storefront of this one-story concrete block retail building to dispense medical marijuana. The interior arrangement of the floor space would be renovated to allow the patients to be processed securely. Patients would enter through a high-security door into a waiting room, which will be staffed by a plainclothes security officer. Non-patients will remain in the waiting room. After presenting proper documentation to a receptionist at the check-in desk, the patient would be escorted to dispensing room to purchase their products. All new patients will receive counseling from a patient education specialist. All products will be stored in a highly secured vault with no more than a 30-day supply on site. All deliveries will be pre-scheduled and will take place within the secure delivery area. The building is would be under constant video surveillance. Petitioners state they would create at least 9 full-time local jobs. The hours of operation would be Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Signage will conform to state requirements which ensure appropriate and responsible content, as well as City of Akron zoning requirements. One goal of the Land Use and Development Guide Plan is to encourage the expansion and development of retail activities in areas suited to their needs. The proposed medical marijuana dispensary is within a dense retail area. It has ample parking and is easily accessible to Route 8, which is less than a mile away. The site's also accessible through with 2 Metro bus stops. Any petitioner for a medical marijuana dispensary site must satisfy numerous and rigorous state of Ohio requirements to be considered as one of only 3 dispensaries in Summit County and 18 total in Northeast Ohio. Both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval subject to conditions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, we'll open up the public hearing for anyone wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on Buckles Boulevard, reference the medical marijuana dispensary at 1912. Anyone wishing to speak in favor?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Sheezer. I live at 6549 West Point Drive in Hudson, Ohio. And I have some documents that I can hand to the committee.
Thank you.
As Mike mentioned, we are a local LLC here in Ohio seeking to establish a retail dispensary in the Akron vicinity. The Buckholzer location was chosen for several different reasons. One, as you may know, the restrictions on where the locations can be based on distances to parks, schools, churches, and other locations is very restrictive. So ideally, we're looking for a location that has decent traffic, accessibility, and is serving the greater community that meets those restrictions. The facility at Buckholzer is an ideal retail location. It's set back from the road. As mentioned, the signage is very much business-oriented. No identification associated with medical marijuana is allowed in the actual signage that will be used. The facility itself will employ between 10 and 15 employees once we're at full capacity, and we look forward to being able to generate the tax revenues associated with that for the local community, as well as being an active member in the local community. Security is one of our primary concerns. Attached in the documentation that you see has a very robust security plan related to on-site security officers, as well as video surveillance constantly of the facilities that's tied into the state system. In addition, as mentioned, the vault is a secure location for any of the actual products that are transferred and stored, as well as any of the cash receipts that are received.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 1912 Buckholzer Boulevard? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request? Anyone else in favor? Anyone? Very good. Now we will provide an opportunity for the young man to speak against the proposed conditional use request at 1912 Buckholzer Boulevard.
I don't know if there was a misunderstanding whether I was speaking for or against the application for dispensing of drugs at Bushover, but it seemed like there was a lack of some information here about it. Especially, it says they would hire 10 to 15 people. I was wondering on that 10 to 15 people that are at this particular dispensary, what percentage of that has city council and the administration adapted for the hiring practices of the people for the city of Akron residents? How many of those people will be hired as residents of the city of Akron as a hiring quota for these dispensaries? Because I understand there's like 4 phases to this thing. There's a growing license, and there's a packaging, there's a lab license, and there's a dispensary for the drugs. But at each one of these stages, even the growing and the cultivating, we should have something written for our hiring quota that we have in our city, that whenever there's any government project, we can indicate that a certain number of residents of Akron are to be hired on a percentage-wise, even if it's hours or just in numbers of people who live and who are residents of the city of Akron.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak against the proposal at 1912 Buckholzer Boulevard? Anyone else wishing to speak in against? Anyone else? Okay, very good. We'll close the public hearing portion of this public hearing and open it up to any committee members who may have questions. Mr. Swirsky?
Could you please clarify who will be able to receive marijuana at your dispensary? I mean, it's my understanding that it's only the people who've been diagnosed with only very serious medical issues. Is that correct? And could you just elaborate on that a little bit? Okay, it's not something we're just making it generally open to the public.
Correct.
Okay.
There are a defined number of conditions in the state regulations that qualify for medical marijuana. That is then controlled by physicians that are licensed by the state to ultimately be able to prescribe the medical marijuana. So only somebody arriving at the facility that has a authorized card that is issued through the process will be accepted into the actual facility. You may enter the front waiting area, but to gain biometric control access to the back area where counseling and the products are contained, you have to identify yourself and have the valid state-issued ID.
But I don't know if you can elaborate on which diseases is this going to
There are
address?
I think there are 21 actual conditions.
21 conditions, and these are all things that the physicians who grant the cards have been trained in, and the guidelines are very explicit.
That's correct.
So it's not just headaches or
No, it's
don't have a party Friday night, so,
a lot of it has to do with neuropathy type related diseases that are tied to the nerve synapses and the ability to transmit. So things like epilepsy, things like seizure disorders, certainly chronic pain management is covered under that. Again, it is controlled by a physician and only administered under the physician's care that they agree the conditions warrant the use. There are several others that are tied to fibromyalgia. I could probably give you the entire list if you give me a second to pull it up, but there are 21 specific conditions. They are ultimately related to neurological disorders as well as pain disorders.
okay, could you get us a list of those conditions?
I can absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Any council members? Afterwards, be happy to talk. Further questions or comments? Hearing none. Very good. We'll invite you back this evening at 7 o'clock where we'll conduct a second public hearing. Afterward, we'll make a recommendation. The next item that's up for public hearing is ordinance authorizing conditional use to establish medical marijuana processing at 1956 South Main Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Galenas Labs LLC received City Council and State of Ohio approval to construct a 10,000 square foot, two-story building for a level 2 medical marijuana cultivation facility at this location. They're now asking permission to include the processing of medical marijuana to their facility. In order to accommodate the processing of medical marijuana, the building will be expanded at the rear, and the original interior arrangement, which includes office space, cultivation area, and operational area of the building, would be slightly modified. Medical marijuana processing will consist of converting medical marijuana flower and leaves into more purified products such as oils, lotions, transdermal patches, tablets, and other medically suitable products. Air intake and exhaust will be controlled through mechanical ventilation in the building. Security measures will include video and alarm monitoring, digital key access, backup power generator, and a secured vault. Petitioner anticipates adding 12 full-time employees with an average annual salary of $65,000 by 2019. The previously approved facility, which will begin construction in early 2018, would be an attractive development that will enhance this commercially developed neighborhood. Since all the processes associated with the processing of medical marijuana would be indoors, the proposed additional use will not be intrusive to neighboring properties. Any petitioner medical marijuana processing site must also satisfy numerous and rigorous State of Ohio requirements to be considered as one of 40 statewide processors. Since the location has already received approval from the City of Akron and the State of Ohio for medical marijuana cultivation, adding the processing in the same location is an appropriate land use, and both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, we'll open it up for public comment in reference to the conditional use request at 1956 South Main Street for medical marijuana processing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 1956? In favor?
Willie Smith, like I was saying before, there are different stages or phases of this operation that needs to be clarified, okay, where the residents of the city of Akron stand as far as the hiring procedure in each one of these licensing phases. Like I said, there's a growing license phase, which is cultivating. I mean, what percentage of the people, the residents for Akron is going to work, is going to be hired. And this, as we're talking about now, the processing licensing, which is another, which is like packaging the product and so forth. It still isn't clear. I haven't seen anything yet where the residents of the city of Akron will be getting their hiring quotas and will be hired on this job, and how many and by number, or what man hours, what percentage of man hours will we be qualified for under any of these marijuana contracts.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request, 1956 South Main Street?
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir.
I also have handouts for the facility for processing. Well, as Mike said, I think the main focus here is to produce high-quality, very administered doses of medical marijuana using extraction techniques that are safe for the industry. This facility will plan to use CO2 extraction, which is the safest form. It will be fully compliant with all local ordinances as well as state ordinances. As mentioned, the employment, we expect around 12, 13 people. Myself, I'll be running it as CEO. My background is in aerospace engineering. Two of our lead associates, which will be our Director of Operations and Quality, or PhDs in chemistry, and this will be a very clinically run, professionally run organization. The location, also being co-located with the grow facility or the cultivation facility, provides higher level of security as less opportunity for diversion of materials since they are self-contained within the same building.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at South Main Street? Anyone else in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against the proposal in 1956? South Main Street, anyone against? Anyone? Okay, very good. Open up the questions from the committee. From council members. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Sims.
So I just want to be clear. Do they have a grow license and now are asking for a processing license? Is that, so how do we monitor really how good of a partner they've been as a grower and now adding another piece to it if they haven't grown yet? Who said that? Speak up.
I'm sorry, is there a question? There's a question for Mr. Antonucci?
Yeah.
Mr. Antonucci?
Yeah, I guess at this point, we really wouldn't. We do know that they were chosen by the state through that rigorous process to get the cultivator's license. So out of all those that applied, a particular group got chosen for the cultivation. So it's the location, and as far as the land use is suitable for the cultivation. So we figure with just a little bit more square footage, they can do both the cultivation and the processing at this same location.
Very good. Mr. Swirsky?
Mr. Antonucci, could you say a few words, or gentleman there, about what the state does in terms of investigating these companies and checking their track record?
The thing of it is,
I know you don't know everything, but
I'll get this.
Or maybe you could, yeah.
I think the one thing, our charge here as a committee is to make a recommendation to council in terms of the land use itself. We cannot look and value companies on their performance in the market. We have got to look at the land use piece of this. We've got to look at the adequacy of utilities. We've got to look at the surrounding neighborhood, things along those lines. I certainly appreciate the questions here, but our charge here legally from a standpoint, and a lot of departments welcome to weigh in, but is to just strictly evaluate this on the strength of the conditional use request from the zoning aspect of this. So, yeah, we just kind of stick to that. I think that's what Mr. Neal? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate what you said. The point I just want to make, because I know usually we do kind of like ask these questions because it's when it comes before us at planning that all these other questions come up. To the point that was asked by Smith from colleague Ms. Sims, at some point I think it would behoove us as council to have a discussion about the potential impact of these facilities in our community. And we had, in the past, different members have asked about what the community benefit is going to be from these groups. I know this isn't the committee, but I think it would be good for us to, as council, to set a time when we discuss and we set
I think from a land use perspective, yes, we should have that discussion.
No.
I don't dispute that whatsoever. I'm just saying it's a slippery slope for us as a council to try to evaluate based on the strength
Yes,
of our
sir.
business, or to try to regulate based on the performance.
Yes, sir. No, and that part I do understand, but it's usually that these questions are come to us, or we start thinking about these things, because this is usually the first stage when it's brought to our attention that these businesses are coming into our community. One that comes to mind is the development up on Brownstone. We just looked at the land use, but after that, we realized that there were a lot of other variables that we needed to address with that type of development. But this right here, I'm saying as council, we need to, if this isn't the committee, which I understand it's not, we need to determine a time when we have this discussion about the potential benefits and the potential challenges that come from these or any other kind of business when we bring them into our community. So I don't know, because this comes up to us every time in planning when we have these questions, but planning isn't the place where we are to have the discussion, but we don't, we need to define when and where we'll have them. So just so that this point isn't lost. Thank you, sir.
Wasn't discounting, just saying our charge for this based on, okay. Further questions or comments? Very good. 3 is a public hearing authorizing a conditional use to construct oversized garage at 280 Hampshire Road.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Matthew Hornbrook is requesting permission to construct a 32-foot by 46-foot, or 1,472 square foot and 20-foot in height garage on his property. By code, the maximum allowable size for an accessory structure is 900 square feet and up to 15 feet in height. As such, this request is exceeding the code requirements by 572 square feet and 5 feet in height. Proposed garage is to be situated towards the east side of the property, 10 feet behind the building line, and a distance of 33 feet from the eastern property line, 48 feet from the northern property line. The new structure will be constructed to a height of 20 feet, containing 4 separate garage doors and a man door along the southern elevation. The structure would be of wood frame construction, with black shingles on a gabled roof to match the house, which is painted blue. The structure will have gutters and downspouts to mitigate water runoff. The existing large parcel has an ample amount of open space for construction of a new garage, and all required building line setbacks are exceeded. The petitioner has stated that the garage will be only used for residential purposes of storing vehicles, tools, lawn care, and other personal equipment. Both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval subject to conditions.
Thank you. At this point, we'll open it up for public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on the north side of Hampshire Road, east of Wolcott, 280 Hampshire?
My name is Matthew Hornbrook. I live at 280 Hampshire. The reason why I want to build such a large garage is, first of all, when I moved into this house and I brought my travel trailer there and parked it in the backyard, I shortly thereafter had the city inspector come out because my neighbors did not like that I had the trailer parked there. The city inspector said that I was within compliance, but made me realize that my neighbors don't really like it there. I also currently have 3 teenage drivers in the house. So between me, my fiance, and the 3 teenage drivers, we have 7 cars. So at any given time, we have 5 cars parked in the driveway. Being able to build this garage would allow me not only to put the trailer in, but it will also allow me to park all of these vehicles inside. One of my cars is a smart car, so it can fit with a few others. I also, when I moved onto this property, put up a temporary shed to store my lawn mowing equipment because I have a rather large mower. So this garage would also allow me to move that garden, the equipment currently in that shed, into the garage, and then I can take down that temporary shed because it really doesn't quite match everything. It's a Rubbermaid as opposed to, a fully constructed shed. So my goal is like I'll be able to consolidate everything into one thing. It'll look like, it will match the property. When I did this in front of the other committee, my neighbors came out against this because they say it's too large, but On the streets that I live on, at 28 Hampshire Road, they built what can only be described as a guest house. It is huge. It has 2 garages plus a living area to it. Also, on the other street that I live on, Walcott, down at 58 Walcott, someone built an external garage which had, you know, a lower level plus a living level on the top one. And I think I actually stopped by and talked to him when he was getting his stuff, and he said it was 26 feet tall. Plus it needed another conditional use. So building these large garages actually seems to be more the norm in the neighborhood than the exception. So.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request? Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor? Very good. Anyone wishing to speak against the conditional use request at 280 Hampshire? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone? Okay, very good. We'll close the public hearing. Is there any questions or comments from any committee members or council members? Okay, very good. We'll now move on to the balance of the agenda at this time and invite again those individuals who are petitioning the city for these conditional use requests to please come this evening at 7 o'clock and participate in the public hearings. Thank you. I'm going to recommend time on, well, actually, I'd like to ask for a recommendation on item 4, authorizing conditional use to install 2 brine wells west of Manchester Road. I understand that there was a number of questions that was brought up at last week, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago. That particular committee meeting, public hearing, those have been answered. There has been correspondence between the city and I believe it's Cargill in reference to these questions, and so I'd like to, if there's short of any questions or concerns, I'd like to ask for a recommendation on this item. Any questions or comments first? Okay, Mr. Swirsky.
Yes, I just want to emphasize, I think everybody, I didn't request it, but everybody got these in their box, that they, I know you got an email also, there was a series of questions asked at the last meeting, myself and other council people. They answered those questions. I followed up with some more questions. I also had someone showed me how to access the Department of Natural Resources inspection data. I got those records. I reviewed them. I found that the company had a very good track record in terms of protecting the health and safety and the residents, and especially our drinking water supply. It appears that the record is very good. I also went there on Saturday, and they were very gracious and allowed me to tour. There's also some follow-up questions to their responses. I hope everybody on the committee has seen these. So there is an absence of regulation at the state level, but there is some, and it does appear that the company is taking care of business.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Further questions or comments? Is there a recommendation for a favorable report with suspension of the rules? Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Very good. We'll report that out favorable this evening. I'm just simply going to request time on the balance of the agenda, and we can now move into the new list of legislation, of which I believe it's item 0 is authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement for the sale of city-owned property and the execution of an exclusive right-of-way license agreement on a portion of city-owned land located between 925 and 955 Grant Street. Mr. Hendren.
Members of the committee, we're asking for authorization to sell a small portion of land which was part of the former rail bed that snakes through Akron and goes behind this property at 925 Grant Street. It's a very small portion. We're reserving some of that right-of-way for what might be a future hike and bike trail, maybe the Heritage Trail. but this .2236 acres is not needed for the trail or any other reason for the city to own. So this will put it back into real estate taxation and allow this company to continue to park and grow there.
Thank you. Is there further questions or comments? Questions or comments? Consent agenda, okay?
That
or
would
would
be
you like-
perfect, thank you.
Okay, very good. Is there a recommendation for consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Nay, the ayes have it. Okay, item 1 is approving the sale of city-owned land to Heather and Aaron Woodard. Is there someone here on this particular item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be the sale for a new single-family home. This is in our Hickory corridor. It is at our standard price for that area.
Very good. Questions or comments? Consent agenda, okay?
We would ask for suspension of the rules if possible on this one. They, their bank has set a deadline for their funding.
Very good. Is there a recommendation for suspension of the rules with a favorable report?
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. 2 is directing the appropriation of a fee simple interest in real property owned by David White located at 1166 Fifth Avenue for the purposes of constructing, maintaining, repairing, enlarging, reconstructing a sewer or sewers and water lines for drainage, sewerage, and water line purposes in connection with the CSO RAC 3 Kelly Green project, declaring the intention of the City of Akron to proceed under ORC 163.
Thank you. This would be the second step in the appropriation. We have mortgage issues here that we're not able to resolve.
Okay, very good. Questions or comments? Is consent agenda okay?
That'd be fine.
All right, very good. Is there a recommendation for consent?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Okay, there's an abstention, Mr. Clerk, by Mr. Neal. Would you like a roll call?
Roll call of the Planning Committee, Fusco.
Yes.
Amovian. Kamer. Deal. Swirsky.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Very good. We'll now move on to item number 3, which is directing the appropriation of a fee simple interest for real property owned by Tamara Paisley, I hope I pronounced that, formerly known as Tamara Gaffney, that was a little easier, located at 339 Chittenden Street for the purposes of constructing, maintaining, repairing, enlarging, reconstructing sewer or sewers and water lines for the drainage, sewerage, and water line purposes in connection with CSO RAC 3 Kelly Green project, declaring the intention of the City of Akron to proceed under ORC 163.
Thank you. This is the same as 2. It's an upcoming project we have. Second step in the appropriation. We have mortgage issues we cannot resolve.
Very good. Is there any questions or comments? Consent okay?
That'd be fine.
Okay, very good. Is there a recommendation for consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
One abstention. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Fusco.
Yes.
Amovian.
She's not present today.
Not present. Kamer. Neal. Swirsky.
Yes.
That was item number 3, correct?
Thank you, sir. Yes. It's a favorable report this evening. Thank you. Anything else coming for the committee? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.
1 second, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I have to have everybody in the gallery please leave the chambers here and get scanned in because we had a confusion with the time for the security officer. So if you would kindly do so, and then we'll begin the next committee.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, they're going to be big pissed off at me for that.
Hey,
Who we got? Kamer. Where's Fusco? He's not here. Oh, Fusco's here. Keith. Kamer. Fusco. Sample. And Hoke. Where's Hoke? Madam Chair, you can get started whenever you're ready.
I'd like to call the Public Service Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes from the last time we met? Thank you. I have a motion and a second, so the minutes have been approved. There are no old items. What we have before us are new items, and we have an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement and/or legislation with the Ohio Director of Transportation for the Canton Road resurfacing project for certain improvements and the construction of curb ramps. Okay, and we have the Deputy Director that will be speaking.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay,
This is the resurfacing of Canton Road from the South Corp line up to Wedgewood, and then from Market Street to I-76. Last year we did the piece from 76 to the North Corp line, or ODOT did. This is to give them, this is so we can do the assessments, because last week we passed the other legislation. So this is just the assessment piece of it.
And the assessment piece is usually a year behind, or is that?
Well, we wait till the work's done.
And
the
then
warranty's
yes.
over, then we put the assessment in, yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Christine, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay, well, good. All righty. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Please go right ahead.
I just want to say thank you again.
You're quite welcome.
Everybody in Ward 6 and that travels on Route 91 and likes to keep their car in good working condition will appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good sense fun.
That's good. Okay. Do you, any other questions? Okay. Anyone from council, other than the committee, that has a question? None? Okay. May I have a motion for consent? I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that item will be placed on the consent agenda. Okay, our next piece before us is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement and/or legislation with the Ohio Director of Transportation for certain improvements on Manchester Road Bridge over the ABC and CSX railroads near Kenmore Boulevard and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is the bridge on Manchester Road between Kenmore Boulevard and Wilbeth. It's an ODOT-owned bridge, and it's give them the authorization to perform the work. So it'll start this year, finish next year. It's basically joint repairs. They will maintain traffic. They won't shut the bridge down. It'll be painting underneath, some concrete repairs, and some minor deck repairs. So this is 100% funded by ODOT.
I noticed that. That's a nice thing. Thank you, Mr. Little. Any questions?